Well, good morning, everyone. It's Sunday morning, and I'm doing this a little bit different this morning. I'm actually filming this video on Sunday morning. The last couple I've filmed usually on Saturday, and then just upload them for Sunday. But today it's Sunday morning. It's 6:51, so hopefully some of you may still be sleeping. But by the time church time comes around, hopefully you can find me on YouTube and we can be together one more time in this virtual world that we're living in for the moment. We are continuing our isolation, so to speak, or our self-isolation in our rooms, many of us, me included. When I'm not in my office, I'm here generally. But I read, I think in the last couple of, yesterday at some point, that Governor Newsom was going to release or open up around May 15th, the state. So hopefully the process will begin soon and we'll get back to a sense of normalcy, whatever that may be. This morning I'd like to talk to you about foundations. How firm, actually, is your foundation? And if you have ever had a house built, many of you have, I know, or purchased a home, one of the first questions that we all ask and we're concerned about is how well built is the foundation that this house sits on? Obviously, it's a very important question. How firm it is, how solid, and so on. A strong foundation, as you know, I'm sure, is imperative for a solid structure. Several years ago, I read about a new housing subdivision that was being built in Mesquite, Nevada. And the story caught my attention because I just found it very, very interesting. It was a beautiful building project by how it was described. Everything was brand new, but there was a problem. Several months after many of the families had moved in, serious cracks began to develop in the doorways and the streets, actually. And there was a constant disturbing smell of methane gas coming from the ground. Something was obviously dreadfully wrong. Well, it seems that the builders had built about 8 of the new residences, homes, directly on top of a landfill. The landfill was about 20 feet beneath the living rooms of these homes, if you can imagine. Things got so bad that the floors began to buckle and shake a little bit and even settle even, deeper than they were. I mean, they weren't flush any longer. And the walls began to crack. The houses began to sink into the ground. Imagine that. It became extremely apparent that someone had forgotten the importance of building on a solid foundation. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus tells us to pay very close attention to our foundation. Jesus tells us how to build a solid foundation for our lives. When you think about it, is there anything more important than living a life well and reaping the benefits of a life well lived? I would argue that there isn't. I've experienced both sides of this coin. However, I've lived well and felt that I was functioning in God's grace and graciousness. And then there have been times in my life where I wasn't. And I can look back and I can see the difference. So I really appreciate Jesus' words here telling us how to live well. It begins in Luke chapter 6, verse 46, and Luke writes this of Jesus. So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? I will show you what it is like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and follows it, Jesus says. Jesus is saying there are 2 types of people. First, there are people who have no interest in God, or certainly in the teachings of Jesus. Second type of people are the folks who love God and want to follow Jesus' teaching. And if you are in the second group, here's what you can expect. It's like a person, this is verse 48, chapter 6 of Luke. It is, so if you follow his teaching and do what he said in that first verse, here's the result. It is like a person building a house who digs deep and lays the foundation on solid rock. When the flood waters rise and break against that house, it stands firm because it is well built. To illustrate this point, Jesus uses a metaphor of building a house. If a person digs deep and builds on a solid rock, the foundation will be secure. Digging deep certainly implies it is not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work. To put this in spiritual terms, Luke chapter 9, verses 23 through 24 gives us the words of Jesus once again. Then he said to the crowd, if any of you want to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross daily and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it, Jesus says. In other words, you must give up your selfish and rebellious natures and turn everything over to Christ. Now that may sound easy enough, but I assure you it isn't. Not always. Our natures resist. Terribly so. We want to have our own way much of the time. Therefore, in my life at least, and probably yours, it's a daily battle, or it can be. Regardless how difficult it may be, however, that's what is required to follow Jesus. That is what is required to build your life on a firm foundation, because the foundation that Jesus is speaking of in Luke 6 is himself. Now, as long as it doesn't rain, any foundation will probably work pretty well. But once the flood waters begin to rise, the foundation is everything. And what I'd like to have you do is think of rain or floodwaters as hardships in life. You know they will come. It's absolute. It's as sure as gravity. But Jesus says that's okay. Don't worry. Be strong. Stay courageous. If your life is built upon me, Jesus says, nothing in this life can remove you from me. Nothing. Now, on the other side of the coin, of course, is just the opposite. Luke records Jesus' words like this. This is verse 49 in chapter 6. But anyone who hears and doesn't obey is like a person who builds a house right on the ground without a foundation. When the floods sweep down against that house, it will collapse into a heap of ruin. So, who hears and doesn't obey? It's a very important phrase in that passage. Let me put Jesus' words another way. You hear the words of Jesus, but you disregard them, dismiss them. You don't allow them to take any root or have any power in your life. And because you have built your life without a firm foundation, when difficulties come, like pandemics, for example, or any other life's tragedies, you'll likely be swept away emotionally and spiritually. Have you ever felt like your life was in a heap of ruin, to use Jesus' words? Well, I know I have. The darkness of life circumstances can be overwhelming. Now let me go back to where we started in Luke chapter 6, verse 46. Remember what Jesus said. So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say? I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and then follows it. When we come to him, listen to his teaching, and follow it, then we have built our lives on a firm foundation. Jesus Christ is our firm foundation. We come to him with an attitude of humility and with a heart of repentance. We listen to his teaching throughout the gospel narrative. And here, as an example, here's another example in John, the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And then we are to follow his teaching. That's the mandate, the imperative, if you will. Jesus, speaking in John chapter 8, verses 31 through 32, says this: "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." I'm reminded of the words of Lee Strobel. Maybe some of you know him. He wrote the book, very well received book. It's been a while now, A Case for Christ. And he was a journalist in Chicago Tribune, I believe. And he was very skeptical about Jesus or anything to do with Jesus, religion in that matter. His wife, however, became a believer. And she kept talking to him about Jesus. So he decided to launch about a year-long investigation. He was an investigative reporter. An investigation into exactly who Christ was. The result was this book. If you've never read it, I would recommend it. He writes this in the book: "Other religions are spelled D-O, capital D hyphen capital O, because they teach that people have to do a bunch of religious rituals to try to please God. But Christianity is spelled done, capitalized D-O-N-E, because Christ has done it all on the cross, and we just need to receive him." So if you want a firm foundation for your life, you need to build it on solid rock, the solid rock of Jesus. I hope these words inspire you for today and give you a sense of hope and encouragement as we go into this new week, last week of April, which is amazing as well. We're moving right into summer, it seems like. So my hope is that God will bless these words to your heart and to your mind. And I thank you so much for being with you in this virtual world one more time. And God bless you. Bye for now.